He knew he was dying. The ice wasn't just outside him anymore. It seeped into his bones, his heart, a final, cold surrender. Elias Thorne, a man who once stared down death on battlefields, was now losing his last fight to a merciless blizzard in Forgotten City Alley. His breath hitched, a ragged, failing whisper against the wind's roar. Just as darkness began to claim him, a pair of silent headlights cut through the swirling snow, painting a fleeting, almost ethereal glow on the grimy wall beside him. An angel? Or just another cruel trick? A fading mind? Fate, it turned out, had one extraordinary card left to play. Inside the limousine, cocooned in warmth and the scent of expensive leather, Seraphina Ashworth felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm raging outside. It was a persistent frost of grief, a year old yet as raw as the day her husband, Charles, had been taken. Charles, her vibrant, compassionate Charles, whose passion for supporting military veterans through his foundation had been the bedrock of his later years. Now, the Ashworth Foundation, like the vast, echoing halls of her mansion, felt like an opulent tomb, a constant reminder of a profound loss. She was en route to a charity gala, a public performance of a role she no longer understood, her designer gown feeling more like a costume for a stranger. Her staff moved around her with a hushed reverence that only amplified her isolation. Charles's laughter used to fill these spaces. Now, only silence answered her unspoken sorrow. Miles away, in a world Seraphina could barely imagine, Elias fought his own silent battles long before the blizzard became his potential executioner. The medals for valor, earned in theaters of war most people have forgotten, were cold comfort, hidden deep within the lining of his tattered military jacket. That jacket was his last shred of dignity, a fragile link to the respected captain he once was. Mornings, if he was lucky, meant a few moments in a public washroom, scrubbing at the grime, trying to reclaim a sliver of the man in the mirror. But the real war was internal. The shriek of tires could send him scrambling for non-existent cover. A sudden loud noise could trigger the vivid, terrifying replay of explosions and screams. PTSD was his constant, unwelcome companion. Old shrapnel wounds throbbed, a dull, persistent ache mirroring the one in his soul. He'd try to find work, and he worked, but the flashbacks, the pain, the crushing weight of shame made it impossible. He hadn't reached out to his old unit. How could he? The leader who had brought them through hell, now a ghost himself. A faded photograph of his smiling team, tucked near his heart, was both a comfort and a torment. Inside the limousine, cocooned in warmth and the scent of expensive leather, Seraphina Ashworth felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm raging outside. It was a persistent frost of grief, a year old yet as raw as the day her husband, Charles, had been taken. Charles, her vibrant, compassionate Charles, whose passion for supporting military veterans through his foundation had been the bedrock of his later years. Now, the Ashworth Foundation, like the vast, echoing halls of her mansion, felt like an opulent tomb, a constant reminder of a profound loss. She was en route to a charity gala, a public performance of a role she no longer understood, her designer gown feeling more like a costume for a stranger. Her staff moved around her with a hushed reverence that only amplified her isolation. Charles's laughter used to fill these spaces. Now, only silence answered her unspoken sorrow. The blizzard, intensifying with each passing moment, forced Seraphina's chauffeur, Alistair, to make a decision. Madam, Alistair, her stoic and long-serving driver, announced, his voice calm but firm, the main roads are impassable. A multi-car pileup. We'll have to detour. It will take us through less familiar territory. It was Alistair who saw him. Dear Lord, he breathed, slowing the vehicle, his usual unflappable demeanor cracking. Madam Ashworth there, by that wall. He gestured towards a dark shape, little more than a mound of snow in a desolate alleyway. As the headlights swept over it, The form resolved into a man, collapsed, utterly still, pulled sharply from a reverie. Seraphina leaned forward. Her first instinct was a familiar, detached pang of sorrow, the kind one feels for distant tragedies. But then, something pierced through her numbness, a fleeting glimpse, as the snow swirled, of what looked like a tarnished service ribbon peeking from beneath the man's ragged coat. And the way his head was bowed, a posture not of simple despair, but of utter, final exhaustion. It reminded her so vividly of the photographs Charles cherished, soldiers displaying a quiet, profound dignity even in the most harrowing circumstances. Charles was stopped, without hesitation. A sudden, fierce urgency, an emotion she hadn't felt in what seemed like an eternity, surged through Seraphina. "Alistair!" she commanded, her voice sharp, clear, cutting through the drone of the storm. "Stop the car. Right now." Alistair hesitated, his concern evident. "Madam, with all due respect, this neighborhood, it isn't safe. We should call for emergency services." "He doesn't have time for that, Alistair," Seraphina insisted, a certainty hardening her gaze. The man looked like he was on the very brink. "We're helping him. Now." Before Alistair could voice further objections, she was pushing open a heavy door, the sudden blast of icy wind and stinging snow a shocking reminder of the man's plight. For the first time in a year, Seraphina Ashworth felt a purpose ignite within her, fierce and undeniable. The moment Seraphina stepped from the car, the brutal cold stole her breath. Her evening shoes offered no protection against the deepening snow, and the wind tore at her, a physical assault. Alistair was instantly by her side, a large umbrella offering scant defense against the tempest. "Madam, please allow me," he pleaded, his face etched with worry for her safety. But Seraphina was already moving toward the fallen figure, her heart pounding, kneeling in the filthy snow, her expensive gown forgotten. She reached out a gloved hand to touch the man's shoulder. He was terrifyingly cold, his skin like ice. "Sir," she called, her voice thin against the wind. "Can you hear me?" Only a faint, shallow exhalation answered, misting briefly in the frigid air. He was barely alive. "Alistair, we have to get him into the car," she cried, her voice now laced with a desperate urgency. "He's freezing to death." Together, the elegant widow and her loyal chauffeur struggled against the dead weight of the unconscious man and the fury of the storm. It was an awkward, desperate heave, their breath misting in the frigid air, but finally they maneuvered Elias into the warm, plush sanctuary of the limousine. He slumped against the leather, a stark figure of suffering in the luxurious interior. Seraphina, breathless, slid in beside him. Without a second thought, she unclasped her cashmere shawl, a gift from Charles, and wrapped it gently around Elias's shivering form, tucking it close. His brief, fluttering eyelids revealed eyes clouded with delirium and immense suffering. A low moan escaped his blue-tinged lips. "Alistair," she said, her voice trembling slightly but resolute. "Take us to the estate, and call Dr. Albright. Tell him it's an emergency." "The main estate, madam," Alistair confirmed, understanding the unspoken implication. She was bringing this stranger into the heart of her home, not to a discreet outbuilding. "Yes, Alistair, the main estate. And hurry." As the limousine surged forward, Seraphina gently brushed a snow-caked strand of hair from the man's forehead. A profound, almost maternal protectiveness washed over her. Who was he, and what cruel fate had brought him so low? The questions could wait. Right now, all that mattered was a fragile life flickering beside her. The arrival at Ashworth Estate was a blur of quiet efficiency. Mrs. Davies, the formidable housekeeper, met them at the guest house entrance, her usually stoic expression giving way to momentary astonishment at the sight of her employer, snow-covered and disheveled, helping to carry a destitute stranger. "Prepare the main bedroom, Mrs. Davies," Seraphina instructed, her voice calm but firm. Warm as blankets, a roaring fire, and send for broth immediately. As Elias was gently laid upon the large, soft bed, a level of comfort he likely hadn't known in years, Seraphina herself helped remove his sodden, frozen outer garments. His old military jacket, stiff with ice, was a struggle. As she pulled it free, a small, creased photograph slipped from an inner pocket, landing softly on the rug. She'd retrieve it later. His clothes beneath were pitifully thin. His body was emaciated. Dr. Albright arrived quickly, his expression grave as he assessed Elias. Severe hypothermia, advanced malnutrition, he stated quietly to Seraphina after his examination. He's endured a tremendous amount. You found him at the absolute 11th hour. Seraphina, any longer out there? He shook his head, the unspoken clear. Warm for fluids, medication, and the gentle care of the household staff slowly began to draw Elias back from the brink. Seraphina dismissed the staff once he was stable, choosing to sit by his bedside herself. The fire crackled, a comforting sound against the fading howl of the storm outside. She finally picked up the photograph. It showed a group of young soldiers, arms slung around each other, their faces bright with camaraderie and youthful confidence. One man, younger, stronger, his eyes full of life, was undeniably Elias. A pang went through her. What had happened to that man? When Elias finally regained full consciousness, his first sensation was confusion, then a deep, instinctual alarm. The soft bed, the warmth, the quiet luxury, it was all wrong. He tried to sit up, a groan escaping him as his battered body protested. "Easy now," a gentle voice said. "Seraphina, you're safe. You were caught in the storm. I found you." He stared at her, his eyes narrowed with suspicion born of long hardship. "Where is this?" he rasped. "Why?" "This is my home," Seraphina replied, offering water. "No one deserves to be left in the cold like that. You needed help." Over the following days, a tentative routine formed. Seraphina brought his meals, sat with him, sometimes reading aloud, sometimes in comfortable silence. She sensed his deep distrust and didn't press for information, only offering quiet care. She told him her name, but nothing of her wealth or the foundation. Elias ate, his body desperate for nourishment, but his mind remained a fortress of suspicion. This level of kindness was an anomaly in his brutal world. He made several attempts to leave. "I can't stay," he'd insist, his voice weak but his pride fierce. "I'm a burden." "You're not strong enough yet, Elias," Seraphina would counter gently, using the name Dr. Albright had found on a tattered ID. "Rest. There's no imposition." Slowly, Elias began to let his guard down, inch by painful inch. He started to meet her gaze. He'd speak, not just of the cold, but of a fleeting memory, a past hope. He saw the sadness in her eyes, too, a shared human fragility that transcended their vastly different circumstances. She'd arranged for new, warm clothes. He accepted them with a reluctance that wore with his obvious need, touched by the simple dignity of the offering. One afternoon, Seraphina's quiet routine was shattered by a call from Mr. Henderson, a pragmatic and often ruthless board member of the Ashworth Foundation. "Seraphina, my dear," his voice was smooth, regarding the upcoming budget meeting. "I've highlighted several underperforming programs for restructuring, specifically the Veterans Outreach. The return on investment is simply not there. Redirecting those funds to the Arts Endowment would generate far more favorable publicity." Listening to Henderson's cold dismissal of the very programs Charles had championed, Seraphina felt a white-hot anger. She thought of Elias, a living embodiment of the men Henderson sought to discard as a line item. "Mr. Henderson," she interjected, her voice like chilled steel, My husband's commitment to veterans is non-negotiable. In fact, I'm looking to expand those programs, not cut them. We will discuss this at the meeting, and I expect you to come prepared to support that vision." A stunned silence met her words. "Seraphina, are you quite yourself?" Henderson finally managed. "Never more so, Mr. Henderson," she replied, ending the call with a decisive click. The encounter, juxtaposed with Elias's quiet dignity in the guest house, solidified a resolve within her that had been dormant for too long. She would fight for Charles's legacy and for men like Elias. A week later, Elias, physically stronger but still haunted, approached Seraphina in the guest house conservatory. "Mrs. Ashworth, Seraphina, I must leave. Your kindness has been overwhelming, but I cannot accept more." Seraphina met his gaze, her own steady. She had anticipated this. "Elias, before you go, there's something I must tell you." She retrieved a faded photograph of his unit. "My late husband, Charles, he deeply admired the armed forces. He often spoke of their courage. He was particularly moved by stories from the Korangal Valley. Specifically, the heroism of a Captain Thorne during the siege of Outpost Phoenix. General Armitage, a close friend, spoke of this captain often. Charles established the Ashworth Foundation, Elias," Seraphina continued, her voice gentle but resonant. "Its primary mission, his deepest wish, was to support veterans like you, to ensure that men like Captain Elias Thorne were never forgotten, never abandoned." She paused, her eyes filled with a new, clear purpose. "It seems the foundation lost its way after Charles passed. And perhaps so did I, until now." The revelation struck Elias with the force of a physical blow. The photograph fluttered from his trembling hands. He, Captain Elias Thorne, a hero left for dead, rescued by the widow of a man whose entire philanthropic legacy was built to prevent such a fate. The irony was immense, devastating. Yet within it, a tiny, fragile flicker of something akin to hope. He had been seen, remembered. A lifetime of suppressed grief, shame, and the crushing weight of being utterly forgotten finally broke free. Elias covered his face and wept great, shuddering sobs that tore through the quiet conservatory. "I thought no one remembered." He choked out, the words ragged. "I thought it all meant nothing." Seraphina moved to his side, her own eyes wet with tears. She placed a gentle hand on his shaking shoulder. "Your service meant everything, Elias," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "To your men, to Charles, and you are not forgotten." She confessed her own deep loneliness, the echoing emptiness of her life. "You've helped me find my way back, Elias. You've reminded me of Charles's true vision, of what truly matters." He looked up, his face tear-streaked, but new light, however faint, was dawning in his eyes. "Your husband, he must have been a great man." "He was," Seraphina affirmed, a soft, wistful smile. "And he believed in second chances." She straightened, her gaze clear and resolute. "The Ashworth Foundation needs to be what Charles intended, a true sanctuary. And I need your help to make it so. Elias, your experience, your leadership, it's invaluable. Will you work with me? Not as a recipient of charity, but as a partner to help others like yourself find their way." Elias looked from her earnest face to the photograph of his men, now resting on the floor. A profound sense of peace, alien yet welcome, began to settle over him. The offer wasn't just for survival, it was for purpose, a way to honor his past by building a future for others. A slow nod. "Yes," he whispered, his voice hoarse but firm. "Yes, Seraphina, I will." The months that followed were a quiet revolution. Elias, with Seraphina's unwavering support and the guidance of Dr. Albright, blossomed. The haunted shadows in his eyes receded, replaced by a steady, quiet strength. He moved into his own apartment on the estate grounds and became an integral part of the Ashworth Foundation, his first-hand experience reshaping their veterans programs into something truly impactful. He wasn't just advising. He was leading, his innate dignity and hard-won wisdom commanding respect. Seraphina, too, was transformed. The heavy cloak of grief hadn't vanished, but it no longer defined her. It was now interwoven with a vibrant sense of purpose. She led the foundation with a newfound passion and a steely determination that surprised many, especially Mr. Henderson. The mansion, once silent, now occasionally hummed with the quiet activity of planning sessions or small gatherings for veterans finding their footing. One sunlit afternoon, Seraphina watched from a distance as Elias sat in the Foundation's Resource Center, speaking with a young, anxious-looking veteran. Elias wasn't offering easy answers, just listening with profound empathy, sharing a quiet word of his own journey. She saw the tension ease from the young soldier's shoulders, saw a flicker of hope return to their eyes. That single act of kindness on a stormy night had not just saved one man. It had rekindled two souls and set in motion a ripple effect of healing that was only just beginning. The ice had melted, and in its place, something resilient and beautiful had taken root, a testament to the enduring power of human connection, proving that even in the deepest darkness, a single light, bravely lit, can illuminate the path for many.